I'm 45 years old.
45 and I'm 31.
And I'm tired of seeing
Hey, the older generation than me, and I am too.
And we've been standing
But let me
around
tell you
as the
something.
older ones, taking all this bullshit. Always hoping for a kumbaya.
Come on.
Always standing around for a kumbaya. Ain't nobody coming to protect us.
Let me tell you
We got to
something.
start our own in
I
life.
understand. But let me tell you something right here. This 16. He's 16.
And they gonna kill him next
He's
week.
16.
What we gonna do?
You tell me.
What we gonna
But
do?
this ain't the way. Because they ready to let loose. If the United States president say, if you loot, we shoot. Do you think doing this gonna help?
I know it.
So it's
I
gonna
know
help.
it. But it's time to stand up.
So don't get into it with him.
At this point, I'm ready to die.
Let me tell
But
you
what's
something.
going on?
Let me tell you something.
That's the problem that we got.
That you see right now, it's gonna happen 10 years from now. And at 26, you're gonna be doing the same thing I'm doing. You understand that? 10 years. You're gonna be right here too.
But he also got to
So what I need y'all to do right now at 16 is come up with a better way. Cause how we doing it, it ain't working. He angry at 46. I'm angry at 31. You angry at 16.
It's over,
You
man.
understand me?
It's over.
Putting yourself in harm's way is not the way.
No, it's not.
You and the other your counterparts the same age and that has that same power. Y'all come up with a better way. Cause we ain't doing it.
That clip is a powerful demonstration of the struggle a lot of us have to deal with. Some of us know that it's time to do something but are clueless about what that something is. Others of us know what to do, but we need help, and lots of help. Welcome to the End Paradigm Shifting. This podcast is all about you and topics that will contribute to your personal and professional growth. Sometimes the topic will be about personal growth. Other times it will be about what's going on in the world and what we need to do in order to meet the challenge. Today's episode, well, there's a challenge that needs to be met, and that challenge is racism and Donald Trump. So let's talk about it. So since the execution of Mr. George Floyd, along with several other high-profile cases of black and brown people who were murdered by police officers, the world has finally been forced to face with the reality that racism is actually a thing and not a convenient excuse. Racism is real, has been real, and this particular generation of people is motivated to take on the challenge of dealing with it. It is sad that the world had to watch the cruel and slow execution of Mr. George Floyd in order for the cries of injustice, abuse, and racism by black and brown people and their allies to finally be acknowledged and validated by the masses. But that painful 8 minutes and 46 seconds of Mr. Floyd's suffocation woke the entire world up from its dream state and into the harsh reality that black and brown people have had to walk the streets with targets on their backs. I'll give you some examples. 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was attacked and killed by a concerned citizen, a.k.a. vigilante, for being black while walking back to his home, which was in a gated community, armed with a bag of Skittles and soda. 12-year-old Tamir Rice was blown away before the squad car could come to a complete stop while he was playing with a toy gun in a public park. He wasn't even facing the officers as they hopped out of the car and they opened fire. 18-year-old Michael Brown's crime was failing to walk on the sidewalk. Tempers flared, and the result was his life being stolen away from him and all of the people who loved him. Then there's 43-year-old Eric Garner, who was surrounded by multiple officers and choked out while a crowd watched him plead for breath. His crime was the selling of loose cigarettes. Then there was 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery, who was run down by white vigilantes in pickup trucks while he was peacefully jogging through a suburban neighborhood. They thought that maybe he was burglarizing things. There are many more black and brown people who have been tragically and brutally murdered by police officers who broke their oaths to protect and serve. But in the interest of time, I'll just close out with 26-year-old Breonna Taylor. Her murder is the latest slap and spit in the face moment America has had to endure. She was killed in her home by police officers who stormed her apartment in the middle of the night under questionable circumstances. In the end, District Attorney Daniel Cameron decided that he would only focus on prosecuting the officer who shot the bullets that entered into the neighboring apartment, which was occupied by a white family. Unfortunately for that family, they are the ironic period to the end of the story about the blatant and systemic racism which stole the life and dignity of an innocent black woman. It is important to note that Daniel Cameron went out of his way to protect those officers by not allowing the grand jury the option to prosecute any of the officers for Miss Floyd's murder. With every injustice that black and brown people are forced to endure or fight against, America continues to prove that it is necessary to have a Black Lives Matters movement. For decades, those in power who have benefited off of racism have worked hard to convince the world that black and brown people are dangerous, lazy, ignorant, and not ambitious, despite being the labor force responsible for building America's infrastructure. When the labor stopped being free, the lazy narrative became a thing. Hardworking slaves became shiftless niggers who were a drain on society. The moment the physical enslavement of black and brown people was stopped, the mental and emotional enslavement of black and brown people began, with the 13th Amendment created as a mechanism to re-enslave black and brown people whenever possible. There's a reason why there is a history of black and brown people receiving harsher treatment from the police and much harsher sentences than their white counterparts for the same crimes by the justice system. America has a major problem with racism, and the reason why racism is a problem is because of our collective ignorance. On one end of the spectrum, we have people who don't like people who aren't like them, and those people definitely aren't interested in entertaining and supporting diversity. In the middle, you have people who are focused on themselves, their family and close friends, and therefore, they generally can't be bothered until they are personally impacted by a problem, at which point they become active. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have those who have been beat down, starved emotionally, intellectually, socially, and economically, and the result of the starvation is the kind of behavior that becomes the convenient justification for continued mistreatment and disregard of this population from those in power. After George Floyd's murder, I started seeing this post in my Facebook feed being shared by many of my male-gendered Facebook friends. In short, this declaration was to the racist people of the world, specifically racist killer cops, and that declaration emphasized that they were fathers, brothers, sons, employees, etc., 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 and that their lives mattered, and that the racist killer cops shouldn't indiscriminately murder them. I never finished reading the entire proclamation because it pissed me off, and the reason it pissed me off was because I never thought it was fair for members of the LGBTQX community to have to come out to the world, and no one should have to proclaim their humanity to any other human being. There are some things that we as human beings should not need to do in order to peacefully exist in this society. So I never hit the like button or shared that post. I honestly wanted to comment on it, but I never could get myself in the right headspace to express my feelings in a way that wasn't offensive or aggressive. Plus, I understood how every last one of those people who shared that post were feeling. So many of us are tired of being tired, and we don't know what else to do or say to change American society so that it is as safe for black and brown people as it is for white people. It is absolutely exhausting trying to appeal to the hearts of the heartless. The truth of it is a waste of time trying to appeal to people who benefit more from the status quo. In their minds, change means that they get less, and they don't want to give up. They don't want to have less. So them having a change of heart isn't very likely. So I recommend checking out the book, How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. One of the areas he discusses that really caught my attention was the concept of power. In order to overcome racism, the anti-racists of the world need to seize power. Those who currently are in power have worked hard for that power, and they don't want to give it up. And the truth of it is they're not going to give it up without being coaxed. So while anti-racist people are marching, demonstrating, and begging for those who hold power to have a change of heart, the powerful continue to exploit the system by stealing money, stacking sympathetic judges in courts, and stockpiling guns and weapons for use in case they lose the systemic control they enjoyed for generations. Power is the key. Power is the most effective catalyst for changing the hearts of even the most seemingly heartless people. Think about it. Around this time last year, the Black Lives Matter movement was considered to be a terrorist organization by many people. The movement was energized by the murder of Mr. Floyd, and now Black Lives Matter is a movement that corporations are attaching themselves to, which has created for them financial growth and much needed social currency. In turn, Those corporations are strengthening the legitimacy of the movement, which in turn further normalizes the movement's ideology, which is Black Lives Matter. So let's talk about power. Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem. From that moment on, Colin was treated as a deviant by a lot of people in this country who probably didn't pay attention during their history and social studies classes, since they truly bought into the silly lie that the anthem and the flag represented the military. Now, just in case you're still confused, the military fight under the flag and not for the flag. The American flag doesn't represent the military. The flag represents America and its ideologies, and the members of the military fight to protect Americans and the American ideologies. So kneeling during the anthem isn't disrespecting the military. An example of disrespecting the military is calling fallen soldiers losers and suckers for sacrificing so much for so little. The murder of Mr. Floyd proved Colin's point, and now it seems like standing for the national anthem is the unacceptable act. The great thing is Colin's personal brand is transcendent football, which is fantastic. What is unfortunate is that he still doesn't have a job on the football field, and it doesn't look like he will ever play again. Fortunately, his sacrifice for social change dwarfs any accomplishments he could have made on the gridiron, and he continues to use his brand and resources for social activism. So thank you, Colin, for all that you've done. We have to abandon begging heartless people to have a heart and focus our efforts into growing our power. I know that what I said just sounds extremely radical, but that's because it is. Every major movement that ever has happened on this planet was initiated and led by a person or a group of people with power, and those with power don't beg for what they want. They simply pull the levers necessary to get the results they want. So speaking of power and pulling levers, we have an election coming up. Those of us who want Trump out of office need to work together to make sure that he is voted out of office by a landslide. It is also extremely important that we vote in all the local and national elections because Donald Trump has exposed how fragile the American democracy is and that it takes more than just the president to destroy democracy as we have known it. He needs the help of senators, representatives, and cabinet members in order to further corrupt the judiciary and other governmental departments. If we had a Republican Party that was serious about their role in government and a party system that provides checks and balances on the president, then Donald Trump would have been stopped and contained. But that's not what happened, and countless people around the world are suffering because of the Republican Party's dereliction of their duties when it comes to being a check on presidential power. When it comes to local elections, it is important that Americans learn how to be effective voters so that our society is a proper reflection of what the wants and desires of the majority and not the minority. I highly recommend that you check out votequadrant.com. That's votequadrant.com, which explains the strategic voting methodology that will help end police brutality and bring true justice to the justice system. Most people usually only pay attention to the presidential election, but it's the local elections that have the most immediate impact on your everyday lives. Your vote matters, so get excited about voting. And don't let the electoral college system keep you from voting and voting smartly. Trump won the last election by 77,744 votes. The electoral college points came from Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. 552,694 voters in those three states threw their votes away on third-party candidates who didn't have a chance of winning the election or the 5% of the votes needed to have access to public funds for the next presidential election. And the consequences for the country and the world have been dire, to say the least. There are a lot of people out there who are playing the I don't like Trump or Biden card. That was the same card that we heard in 2016 election, right? Those people felt that both Clinton and Trump were both equally horrible, so they couldn't make a choice, so they opted not to vote. The people who make that argument are intellectually lazy. If you're one of those people who keep comparing Biden to Trump and arriving to the conclusion that Biden is just as bad as Trump, then you're putting your lack of intelligence on display. It is like saying that a fender bender is as bad as a car accident where there are fatalities, or that getting punched by Floyd Mayweather is just as bad as getting punched by Mike Tyson. Intellectual laziness is what is destroying our society. Lack of discipline is weakening us to the point to where we have become vulnerable to predators like Trump and his army of supporters. America's performance during this pandemic is proof that we aren't using our heads. Ridiculous conspiracy theories that were planted into some of our heads have some of us denying the existence of COVID-19 or denying that the virus is actually a problem. The COVID deniers are living their lives like there's nothing wrong, all the while potentially spreading the virus, which is destroying the lives of others. Remember Herman Cain? If you don't know who I'm talking about, look him up. He was seen at Trump's Tulsa rally not wearing a mask and bragging about it. He also authored plenty of tweets leading up to the rally calling the pandemics a hoax and that we all needed to be set free. Consequently, Herman's soul was set free from his body. Herman got sick and died from COVID-19, and his not-so-slow demise matched the typical pathology COVID-19 follows, with the start date of his illness seeming to land around or on really close to the night of Trump's Tulsa rally. Lack of discipline makes the simple act of wearing a mask when in public a complicated act. Some of us who detest being made to wear a mask have lashed out and hurt, maimed, or killed people whose job it was to ask them to wear a mask. If we want a better and safer society, we have to make the commitment to listen, learn, and teach. We have to embrace the idea that if one of us succeeds, we all succeed, and if one of us goes down, we all go down. Knowledge is power, and the reason so many of us lack power is because we aren't properly activated, engaged, or at all hungry to acquire knowledge. We are comfortable with second-guessing, denying, or ignoring our desires and dreams because we fear the risk and the work, and many of us fear the possibility of failing as well as the potential responsibilities that go along with being the greatest versions of ourselves. The bottom line is fear is paralyzing our individual and collective progress and success. We have to learn to ignore the fear of trying, failing, or being successful. We have to stop ducking our heads and ignoring the fights that need to be fought, or coming to the aid of those who need our help. We have to also allow our ability to be empathetic to be as strong as possible, so that rather than judging people who we don't understand or agree with, we can either try to find common ground or leave them be without malice or hatred. Most importantly, we have to grow the fuck up. We have to learn how to make adult decisions, like voting for a political candidate that comes closest to our ideologies or offers up a vision that benefits the greater good, and reject any candidate who doesn't. It means not allowing our emotions to override our logic. The same way we have to purchase what our wallets will allow us to afford, despite our deepest wants and desires, we should be voting for the candidate that has a legitimate chance of winning an election and who comes the closest to meeting our individual and society's collective needs. Basically, the 2020 election is not the time to play around with third-party candidates or not voting at all. In this moment in time, with this particular election, it is absolutely critical that no vote is wasted. Individual idealism shouldn't be wagered in the form of the vote if losing the wager means the potential collapse of society as we know it. I know that sounds dramatic, but think about this. When in your lifetime have you owned an assortment of face masks that you had to wear when you were in the company of other people or had to go outside? At what point in your life has the idea of being in close proximity of strangers stirred up anxiety because you could get sick or get them sick? How is it that we've had more protests in the last 4 years than we've had over the past 30 years? So if you're one of those third-party voting people, save your vote wager for the next election. In the last election, Trump famously asked black people of this country, "What do you got to lose?" Well, rather than focus exclusively on what black people had to lose, I'll run down some of what we all had to lose. 211,000 plus people had their lives to lose. Countless others had good health to lose because COVID-19 will have permanent, lifelong health effects on a lot of people. Millions of people lost their jobs, temporarily and permanently. Seniors in high school lost their proms, traditional graduation ceremonies, and the celebrations that went along with them. Communities lost local businesses. We've lost the ability to freely hug, shake hands, or engage people without worrying about getting sick or passing the sickness on to someone else. People who died in 2020 lost the opportunity to spend their last days in a normal world and their last moments of life with loved ones or near anyone who mattered to them that could hold their hands as they took their last breaths. And their loved ones lost the opportunity to be there to provide comfort and say goodbye. With the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it looks like we will be losing access to health care, and women will lose the right to choose when it comes to their body. I really could go on, but I hope that you get the point. It is time for all of us to participate and contribute. What I mean by that is we need to vote. We need to do whatever it takes to help advance society in a positive direction. That means if the social agreement is that we wear a mask when we are around other people, then we wear a mask. It also means that if you are eligible to vote, then make it your business to learn about the candidates and vote. Election day is coming, and whether you love the candidates or hate the candidates, the point is that one of those two running for office is going to be elected. So you better decide who you don't want to see in the Oval Office and vote accordingly. If you haven't registered to vote, then now's the time to do it. If you don't know how to register, do the same thing you do when you want to find out about anything else and Google it. So let's make it a priority to participate when it comes to the elections and voting. That means no longer shying away from conversations or debates about politics, religion, or money. When we see there's a need, let's rise to action instead of sitting around and waiting for someone else to deal with it. There's an election coming up. Said it again. I'm saying it again. So make it your business to vote. If you're not registered, then get registered. If you're going to mail in your ballot, get the process going immediately. And if it's too late for that, then get your personal protection gear for election day arrive so that you can be as safe as possible. But don't let COVID be the reason why you don't vote. Unless your health is already really compromised, then don't take that chance. But otherwise, get your ass out there and vote. So it is time to close this out. And I don't want to end on a political note. As important as it is, for us to do our civic duty, it is also important that we keep a healthy hold on the feeling of hope, optimism, and the energy required to make our dreams come true. So this is your reminder that you already possess everything that you need to have in order to live the kind of life you want to live. It is up to you and only you to put in the work in order to create that dream life. So if you stick with this podcast, I promise I will help you elevate your thinking so that you're able to be the best version of yourself. This podcast is purpose-built to help us all grow. Growth isn't comfortable, but it can be fun if you convince yourself to love the process of becoming the best version of yourself. So now, if you want to get more of my takes on social and political topics on a consistent basis, please check out the DCMK podcast, which is the acronym for Don't Call Me Karen. My co-host Kelly Heck and I discuss social and political topics, as well as interview people who are in the fight for equality. Also, check out my The N channel on medium.com/the-n for this episode in written form, as well as other pieces that I have written. So, this is The N Podcast, Paradigm Shifting. Thank you for sharing your time with me. And if you haven't subscribed, please do, and comment, share, and hit that like button, okay? Guys, I really appreciate your time together. Until the next time, stay safe, be blessed, and do something kind for someone else just because, all right? Until the next time.